So here's their letter to the Attorney General, citing their exception 552.108, subsection B1, subsection 1, and apparently has to do with the release of internal records that would interfere with law enforcement or prosecution. I had just shown you the language from my request. It's down here in Exhibit 1. Hi, I would like a complete roster of uniformed officers, including names and badge numbers and vehicles to which they are assigned. I also need a list of the agency vehicles, even if they aren't assigned. Thanks. So, and this is where they want to withhold the information because they said it's an internal record or notation relating to law enforcement or prosecution, and as such is accepted from disclosure. But, I mean, names, badge numbers, vehicle assignments aren't really related to prosecution or law enforcement. Those are just kind of personnel, daily routine type of stuff. And a governmental body must properly demonstrate how the release of the information it seeks to withhold would interfere with law enforcement. So, and see here they're talking about undercover capacities, which I did not request, covert operations, the lives of undercover officers. Like, they're being real dramatic right now when all I requested was names and badge numbers of uniformed officers and vehicles to which they're assigned. And so they said that the responsive information contains shift change schedules, which I didn't request. They're saying that it contains that information, but I did not request no shift change schedules. And vehicle assignments for individual officers and other department employees as well. Okay, yeah, well, if they drive the vehicles, sure. As to specific departments and or functions, okay, but it's not related to law enforcement or prosecution, crime prevention. And here they say, in City of Fort Worth v. Cornyn, the court reasoned that a reasonable interpretation of the statutory language of Section 552.108 reveals that the type of internal records that could interfere with law enforcement are those that would divulge a police department's methods, techniques, and strategies for preventing and predicting crime. Get it? Shift change schedules. Oh, yeah, get this. They go on to say shift change schedules have been cited as an example of an internal record that could interfere with law enforcement if released to the public. First of all, I did not request shift change schedules, but I don't think that that information would interfere with law enforcement because it's not related to the investigation or prosecution of a crime. It's just daily personnel routine type of stuff. It's not anything that's gonna interfere with their duties. Well, if it is, that's something that they're going to have to demonstrate to the Attorney General. And they cited City of Fort Worth v. Cornyn 86 Texas Appellate 2002. Well, anyway, the language from that case law is that these are methods, techniques, strategies. Okay, our names and badge numbers and vehicle assignments, methods, techniques, and strategies for preventing crime. What crime is it in connection to? I mean, it's not. It's just daily, routine type of stuff. And according to this language from the case law, that's key right there. It needs to be a strategy, a technique, a method. And I don't think that names and badge numbers are, and vehicle assignments or whatever. But they wouldn't even partially fulfill the request. They wanted to withhold all the information until the Attorney General told them what they have to, disclose. What they are legally able to withhold, they want to go ahead and withhold everything they can. So anyway, moving on, it says shift change schedules have been cited. Oh, really? Shift change schedules have been cited as an example of an internal record that could interfere with law enforcement if released to the public, which I don't think is true. And I didn't request shift change schedules. But here they said that shift change schedules has been cited as an example. And it says, see Texas Attorney General Ordinance 413 from 1984. Okay? So let's just have a look at that real quick. Yeah, let's just have a look at Open Records Decision number 413 from the Attorney General of Texas, 9th, 1984. To Mr. McKenzie, the acting director of the Texas Department of Corrections, he says, a newspaper reporter has asked you to release. Yeah, man, this is a kind of old school records request right here, isn't it? Kinda. A newspaper reporter has asked you to release a sketch showing security measures, pedestrian and vehicle barricades the Texas Department of Corrections plans to put in place around the Huntsville prison unit during the next scheduled execution. You claim that Sections 3A1 and 3A8 of the Open Records Act, Article 625217A VTCS, authorize you to deny this request. Section 3A of the Open Records Act provides that information collected, assembled, or maintained by governmental bodies in connection with the transaction of official business is public information. In our opinion, the requested sketch is clearly within the scope of Section 3A. Section 3A8 of the Act accepts from required public disclosure records of law enforcement agencies that deal with the detection and investigation of crime, and the internal records and notations of such law enforcement agencies, which are maintained for internal use in matters relating to law enforcement. The Department of Corrections is a law enforcement agency within the meaning of this section. You contend that Section 3A8 is applicable in this instance because the sketch shows the deployment of law enforcement officers, security personnel, and pedestrian and vehicle barricades for the next execution. And this is one of those valid interests protected by the Law Enforcement Exemption. During the last such procedure, there were several crowd control incidents that taxed the ability of local law enforcement agencies to maintain order. Publication of the requested information would place in the hands of those who might wish to create unrest a tool to neutralize the effectiveness of law enforcement agencies charged with the responsibility of maintaining order. We agree. The release of the requested sketch could seriously impair the ability of the Department of Corrections to maintain necessary order during the next scheduled such appointment. They are inherently volatile events. Effective crowd control is difficult enough even under the best of circumstances, and in our opinion, such control would be made unreasonably difficult if a sketch showing planned security measures were released. We therefore conclude that this sketch constitutes an internal record of a law enforcement agency which is maintained for internal use in a matter relating to law enforcement within the meaning of Section 3A8, and that it may interfere and that it may therefore be withheld from public disclosure. So they're saying that a sketch of the prison during executions showing vehicle and pedestrian barricades could be accepted from public disclosure because it included such planned security measures. Okay. The deployment of law enforcement officers, security personnel, and pedestrian vehicle barricades for the next execution. So how does that equate to, if I know when their shift changes are? You know what I mean? How does that equate? This has, to my knowledge, this has nothing to do with shift changes. It didn't cite any example of shift changes. It just says that it showed the location, the deployment of officers. The sketch shows the deployment of law enforcement officers and vehicle barricades. Yeah, this has nothing to do with shift changes. It's hardly a parallel. It's not a it's an incongruent example. I mean, but I think it's really dumb because they sat there and said that shift changes have been cited as an example, and then they cite this decision of the Attorney General, and nowhere in here does it say anything about shift changes of, just a regular police department. This is talking about something way different than what I requested, which was just names, badge numbers, vehicles that the taxpayers pay for, just common daily routine type of stuff. And, they just want to withhold it by any means necessary. They're going to say, oh no, it's going to make us unsafe. It's going to put our officers at risk. It's going to interfere with our jobs. We won't be able to prevent crime. So they're going to have to demonstrate how it interferes with their law enforcement and prosecution. And what they're saying is that they said similarly, this would show how our law enforcement officers are deployed. So they're saying that a sketch of a prison during an execution that shows vehicle barricades and pedestrian barricades, right? And that shows, maybe it would show like the deployment of those officers at the barricades for security during an execution at Huntsville Prison. They're saying that telling me what vehicle numbers they're going to be driving around in is the same as showing me or showing, someone where the security officers would be deployed at a prison execution, at the barricades of a prison execution. Hardly the same thing.